Division 6, Marlon Barnes.
Here.
Division 5, Robert Harris.
Here.
Division 4, Justin Lane. Division 3, Frank Donato. Division 2, Keith Dice.
Here.
Division 1, Shelley Sorsovan.
Here. Item number 4, adoption of agenda.
I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 5, public comment period open to the public. Do we have anybody here that wishes to speak? Item number 6, new business. Do we have any new business?
We do not.
Thank you. Item number 7, consent calendar. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I move we approve the consent.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 8, items for consideration and possible action. 8A1. Review draft of the 2018 AV Water Master Annual Report. Director Paris.
I'm going to pass to our general manager.
Thank you.
Yes, I have a presentation for you today to go over the highlights of the annual report.
I've worked on that all day.
There we go. All right, so this is the third annual report that's been prepared by the Water Master. And the annual report goes into a lot of specific detail about the various actions that are associated with the judgment physical solution, and gets into a lot of the specifics. So it's a fairly large document, and what I have done is kind of gone through the report and highlighted for you kind of a summary, kind of a high-level summary, and just really concentrating on the groundwater basin itself and what we have learned over the last 2 or 3 years with regards to the groundwater basin, how it's reacting to the judgment, and the condition that it's currently in. So we'll start off with that. Just to give you some additional background that you may have forgot about. The Antelope Valley groundwater basin boundaries are identified in DWR basin number 6-44. The groundwater basin covers 1,390 square miles. We have a native safe yield of 82,500 acre feet. And we forget sometimes that the groundwater basin is broken up into 5 sub-basins. The Central Antelope Valley sub-basin, the West Antelope Valley sub-area, the Southeast sub-area, the Willow Springs, and the Rogers Lake sub-area. Here's a map that shows the groundwater basin and the various sub-areas as it goes through. Remember that our water bank is right here right in this area here. This is the Westside Water Bank, and then the east side is over here in the southeast sub-area. Some of the key terms that we need to that we use that are identified in the reported production rate. That's a right to produce groundwater from the water basin. Ramp down production is an additional right during the ramp down period to produce a certain amount of groundwater. Imported water return flows, that's water that is associated with purveyors that purchase imported water from the agency or other state water contractors, and they get a return flow credit for that. And then there's carryover water. That's water that's unused from one year to another that can be carried over and used in a subsequent year. And then we have stored water, which is associated with actual banking agreements. With regards to groundwater, or just groundwater, not talking about water banks, but with regards to groundwater, it takes 10 years. You have 10 years of carryover before you have to put it in the system. So this diagram here gives you an idea of the various production categories. So if you look at this particular item here, the bottom square is called the production right. And then that's broken up here into the native safe yield of 82,300 acre feet. Here's your overlying production rate, which is approximately 70%. The non-overlying production rate, which corresponds to public water suppliers. You have your Federal Reserve water right here, which is 9.24%. The small pumping class that has about 4.6%, and then the California production rate, which is 0.25%. So this makes up the production rate. But in addition to the production rate, you have these various other waters that I spoke about that are added on to the amount of water that can be produced for the groundwater basin. So you have ramp down production, which will occur for the next 3 years. Then you have imported water return flows, and that'll be an ongoing. There'll be carryover water from prior year, and then the stored water that you may have. And then there's other rights to produce groundwater. There's specific carve-outs that are identified in the Judgement, City of Lancaster, Pigeon Hills, others. And then additional production from, that has to do with water that comes with a replacement assessment. So those are all the forms of production categories that you have in any particular year. So this is a very good diagram to be able to explain to you exactly all the various types of production or production categories, or the amounts of water that can be, and it's the water master's job and the water master engineer's job to identify what these amounts are, keep tabs of all those so that all of them are legitimate numbers and that they can provide balance. Yes?
Could you define California production right?
It's state of California. There's the Highway Patrol. There's a couple other state facilities that have a very small production rate, 270 feet. So the purpose of the annual report is to document the progress in implementing the physical solution that is outlined in the judgment. So it's really has a lot to do with how we're doing. There's two methods in which that assessment is done. It's done through both a mass balance method, which estimates the amount of water coming in versus the amount of water that's being removed. And the change in groundwater storage method is just looking at the contours or the water level contours and any change in those contours from year to year or over time. So these are two methods in which to determine if the physical solution in the judgment is really achieving the goals that it intended to achieve. To give you an idea, the production reporting for 2016 was, so that would include all those line items that we talked about in the previous slide. You had 108,000, a little rate, almost 109,000 acre feet. In 2017, that went down to 89,000. And then in 2018, it's down to 81,000. So you can see there's been a significant reduction in production that's been reported to the water master. Now there is a certain amount of producers that haven't reported, but the lion's share have. So this is pretty good numbers to give you an indication. They may not be, I would go 348 acre feet, but it's somewhere in that, range.
Are some of these numbers from 2018 based off of meter readings?
Yes, yes.
And 17, maybe a few, but 2016, there were very
Probably
few.
less, yes,
Okay, thank you.
yeah.
Dwayne, I had a question. Are we still at the 110,000 acre feet?
Yes, well, they use the term 110,000 acre feet of safe yield because they have an assumed imported water supply that increases it from 82.5 to 210,000 acre feet. To me, that is a kind of a bogus number. The real number that we need to concentrate on is the native safe yield of 82,500, and are you producing mud? Because as this shows you, this is the number you're trying to manage to. This is just an add-on. So your imported water return flow is just an add-on. It's based on how much water you import. So if you're going to manage the basin, you have to be worried about this 82,300.
Okay, so that's the number, 82,300?
82,300, yes. Okay. So they also they've used the agricultural reporting from both LA and Kern County to develop the amount of acres that were in production. So you can see this is kind of an interesting numbers in that you can see we had about over 16,000 acres in production in 2016. In 2017, it went up, as it was reported, as far as acreages to both of the Kern County and LA County. And then you can see 2018 is considerably less in production from the prior year. And this is the year in which remember this is the year that the ramp down started. So this is the first year of the ramp down. So as part of the mass balance analysis, you want to know how much is coming out, but you also want to know how much is coming in. This schematic diagram kind of gives you an indication that most of the water that's coming in is coming through infiltration through the mountain ranges and stream channels. You can see here you got about 36.6 and 19.8, which was rounded off to about 60,000 acre feet of natural return flow from the various, I shouldn't say, natural recharge is probably a better term, that's coming into the groundwater basin. And it's interesting to note here that, you know, the precipitation that you get in rain through the course of the year, they didn't count any of that as actually hitting the groundwater basin. It actually was used up in ample transportation or otherwise. So unless it's flowing, wasn't really considered as part of the safe yield, because they didn't believe that was actually hitting the groundwater basin. And then how they got to the 82,300 is they added about 27,000 acre feet of return flow associated with the use of this water that's in the groundwater basin, and that's how I come up with the recharge amount. It's interesting to note that we have about 9,200 acre feet that are flowing to the playa areas or the hard pan areas where it actually just evaporates away. Very low areas.
So what's the precipitation on the top? It says 676,000.
Yes.
So, and then it says precipitation 485.
Yes. So the way to look at this is that if you look at the precipitation that goes into the mountains that's around our valley, that's the 676,000 acre feet. And then the precipitation that just kind of rains and goes on the valley floor is this number, and it's close to 485,000 acre feet.
How'd you know that?
Some of the chart.
I don't see where it says that.
So yeah, no, that's in the text.
Dwayne, I had one
Thanks for the report.
Dwayne, I had one question.
Sure.
Is it true that the farmers got no return flows?
Well, that's not completely accurate, because if you look at the stream channel amounts of 36,600 acre feet, 19,800 acre feet, there was a return flow amount of 27,000 acre feet that was added to that to get your 82.3. So there's a return flow that was included in the production rate. So you are being able to pump the return flow from the native recharge. But there was no, unless you have imported water, you have no return flow from that source.
Right. And the public water suppliers got 40% return flows?
Or 39%. For imported water only.
Okay.
So, so that's what we have here, that this is what this graph shows.
So this chart basically is saying most of the groundwater comes from the stream channels?
That's correct. So when we talk about adding water to Big Rock Creek or Little Rock Creek, it's probably adding, if we add extra water to that, that's a recharge that'll directly impact the groundwater basin. Yes?
So Dwayne, you say to arrive at the 80-some thousand acre feet per year safe yield, we have to add to these direct recharge, natural recharge, the imported water.
Yes, on top of this, you add the imported water on top of this. This is just the native water that falls in the area.
And the assumption with the imported water is that 39% of it returns to
Right.
it. And
It's only 27% for the native water, but magically the imported water is at 39%.
And if, as some people believe, the actual return flow percentage is lower than 39%, then our native safe yield is lower than 82,000.
Well, no, because this doesn't include any return flows from imported water. It does not include any return flows. That's added on to it.
Well, it appears to me that, well, how do we arrive at the 80-some thousand?
Okay, this is a good exercise here. So we got 36,600 acre feet coming from street channel that go directly to the groundwater basin. We got from our mountains and uplands 19,800 acre feet of water that comes from the mountains through the soils layers there. And that's about 60,000 acre feet. Okay? And then they applied, assuming that the farmers and the landowners were going to use this groundwater, let's see if I can get it here, the groundwater basin and irrigate with it. They assumed another 27,000 acre feet of return flow was coming back through that process.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and that's how you get to the 82.3, and then water plus the return flows from the imported water.
Okay, thank you.
And that's where we get the 110.
That's where you get to 110.
Right.
All right, so let's go on to the next one. This one here, as we were looking at how do we determine how much water is actually coming into the basin, believe it or not, all these little triangles are stream gauges. So there are stream gauges all along the mountain ridges here that kind of measure how much water is actually flowing into the groundwater basin. And then these little diamonds that you see here, these are precipitation. So these actually measure the amount of water that is raining on the valley floor. So that's how you get the basis for the numbers that you have in that previous chart come from these various monitoring stations.
Who's in charge of the monitoring stations, DWR?
I think it's USGS has some, DWR might have some. I don't know exactly who's involved with all of them, but they're all, you know, state agency. They're not AVEK or the water masters. Anyway, some of these precipitation stations may be at cities or other places like that. We just do that as a general rule, but by and large, USGS is the one that provides the majority of the data for this area. And I'll just note here that you can see that even though there's, this is the groundwater basin here outlined in red, you can see that some of these hydraulic areas to the side here, this dark blue line here, is where you have influences that help, these ridge lines here help put water into the groundwater basin. So those are what we would call watersheds that you'd like to protect to make sure they aren't polluted or don't have any other issues that would impact the groundwater basin. And so you have a mass balance, you can see with the testing that you have and the of the water coming in and the production breaks, you can get a balance as to how much is coming out. The second method is determined by looking at the change in groundwater elevations. So this is one way to look at this. And you can see these are just areas of equal elevation. And in this case, this is kind of, this is higher than this, which is, this is lower, this is lower, this is lower. So you can see this is the low point in here, or the kind of the hole in the groundwater basin, so to speak, as you can see. But note about where that is, because there's some good news on the horizon here. And you can see this is much higher up elevations, and the flow comes this way, and the flow comes this way. And there's a big flat area where it's just pretty even as far as groundwater elevations. So this one is for 2018, I believe. The number that my eyes can see correctly. And then this is spring of 2018, and then this is spring of 2018. I want to toggle back and forth for you a little bit so you can see that there's not much difference in groundwater elevations between the two. So you can see that here's the area of depression, and you know, the areas out here. Whoops. Preview, and the areas here. So, but they do go through an iteration. So the great thing about this kind of method is that over a longer period of time, you can really see changes as they occur. You know, it's really difficult and probably inappropriate to worry about the difference between one year and the next. But over a 10-year period, this can easily give you some trends as to which way water is flowing, where it's going. But once you get to here, you got 2 years of data, and then they do this map here. And this map is a graphical change in that elevation. So this shows what the difference is. So the areas in blue are where the groundwater elevations went higher. So you can see here in the hole, or where it was lowest, it's increasing in groundwater elevation, which is a great thing. That's a good thing, very good thing. And you know, a lot of that has to do with you know, consistent for me. It has a lot to do with some of the pumping that's been restricted and reduced pumping, so that the natural recharge can begin to improve in these particular areas. And you can see here, all this central area has some pockets of improvement. You notice this area out in here has some improvement, but this area in here is actually going down a little bit. So you got some, you know, the southeast, which I find it a little bit surprising, you know, because here's a subbasin that changes here, and you can see that there's a little reduction in this particular area. And then also look, here's the High Desert Water Bank, not High Desert, the Westside Water Bank, and this actually has a reduction in groundwater levels, but because the prior year was so high, you saw a big spike in the 1 year, and then it looks like it went down and was gone, but it really, all it is it just kind of, we had an artificial mound that's kind of settled down into a little bit, so.
Well, we didn't pump much in 2018 on the Westside Water Bank.
No, we didn't.
Just enough to keep water flowing.
Yeah, just keep water flowing. So there was nothing there other than it's just the natural processes moving forward. And I will note here, if you look here, see how the areas around are kind of blue, you know, because there's a natural influence that we're having in the general region. But there again, once again, this data is, that's why you just don't grab 2 years of data. You have to wait a little while to really start seeing some trends.
Dwayne, it appears that the relationship, in geographical relationship between the Cajon Water Bank and...
Yes, that's a comment we're going to make.
Okay.
Yeah, I noticed that, yes, the Cajon Water Bank and the Westside, or the High Desert Water Bank are not in the proper location. The two of them are very close. So I think they put this one way to the wrong side. I think it's over this area over here.
So we don't have any idea what has helped the basin on the east side? In where it was such a depressed basin?
You know, like you say, it could, you know, it has, I don't think there's any definitive things that you can say other than there has been an improvement. And the reasons why, not sure. I mean, it could be, you know, a lot of this stuff out here on this side, there's a lot of agriculture out here, and we saw that there was some reduction in agricultural acreage. To the extent there was reduction in agricultural acreage and the corresponding pumping, that might explain a lot of it. But it's really, it's just the water master is really trying to assess where the groundwater basin is, so it's actually in pretty good shape and recovered.
Maybe it was so depressed that when people stopped pumping over there,
It just
naturally
starts helping out. So one of the things that was added this year that wasn't in the previous 2 years was hydrographs. They provide more detailed information at specific wells. As more information is gathered, they'll have a better understanding of trends. And remember, what we're trying to do with the water master is to understand what the long-term trends are. This will indicate whether the basin's recovering and stabilizing over time. So this is what a hydrograph looks like. So here's a hydrograph. This is from this is an eye test here. It's 1998 to over the last approximate 10 years here. This is the time period. And it corresponds, this hydrograph here corresponds to this particular well. So you can see this one's very flat on the east side. This one on the very, this side of the very west side has this general slope downward. So you can see that over a 10-year period, you can see the hydrograph. But over the last couple of years is kind of stabilized a little bit. And there'll be more and more of these hydrographs done over the next several years as they get more and more information and have more time to add those. So let's look at this one right here. Look at this one in this particular area, which is very close to where the overpumping was occurring previously. You can see that there's an improvement in that general location, but just a little bit away, there's a reduction. So this gives you a lot of information to look at specific wells, and you can see the general trends of where we are, where we're in regions. As we get more and more hydrographs, we'll be able to determine more and more specifics as far as the trends go. So,
Why is that one well going down so much, Dwayne?
which one's that?
The one in the, right,
This one
Yeah.
right here, that's the one that's right in, I have a good indication that that's probably right in the middle of that agricultural production area. That's just to the east of Lancaster. That that they're contemplating using, recycled water as a method to help alleviate some of the pumping in this particular area. And you can see that's an indication of that going down to fairly center.
How did the Eastside move up?
we can pay for those pipelines for that $400 million
Yeah,
plan out there.
yeah, you can get some water. So these aren't drastic reductions here, and as you can see, as we get more information over time, we'll start seeing things like, hopefully, what we'll start seeing on these hydrographs, these things will start zipping up or start stabilizing, and you won't have the negative downturns. You'll kind of get it to start flattening out or improve, as the case may be. So, in conclusion, the groundwater basin trend is stabilizing and the judgment is working. You know, the total production is just slightly over safe yield. So if you look at the total production, it was just a little bit over 82,000 acre feet. So, that means the amount of removal is getting close to the native safe yield. And then the change in storage was only 1,300 acre feet. So there was 1,300 acre feet to the good than there was before. And so, while the east side was reducing, the central basin was increasing. And so that we'll have to see if these trends continue. We also have 3 more years of ramp down. So if you look at that from that point of view, it'll even be greater reduction on it as far as removals. And so basically Water Master's on track in protecting the groundwater basin from overpumping. And we have a groundwater basin that I think is in good shape, and not anything to worry about too terribly much. Just to keep the program moving forward, and I think it'll do well. The best part about this groundwater basin is a closed basin. There's no removal of water outside of the basin other than evaporation. And if the more we can import water and put it into the groundwater basin over time, that's definitely going to improve the situation moving forward and return the groundwater levels back up.
How can the storage have only changed 1,300 acre feet when we have stored considerably more?
We're just talking about native water
native.
levels.
Okay.
We don't consider imported water used for extra supplies and all those other things. Those are in addition to, remember we talked about production rate, we were only talking about the production rate. All the other aspects of water management are added on. So it would be
That
much
makes
greater
sense.
if it was
Yeah,
that.
that's
But
why
it's going to be taken out someday, so they don't add it into the actual basin balance.
Dwayne, now in 17 years, it says that Kumar said we can revisit the safe yield amounts. Are we going to get back to our original pumping pre-ramp down?
I don't think that's probably likely, but who knows where the production is going to be, and with 60,000 acre feet of actual infiltration coming in, I couldn't imagine how you could get to 120 or 130,000 acre feet of pumping without an increase in some kind of additional source of water coming into the basin.
Is that what the original pumping amount was, 120,000
It was closer, it varied, it went up as high as 180,000, 200,000 acre feet. And then during the 50s and 60s and some of those areas, and then it ramped down to somewhere, I believe, numbers I remember, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, were about 120 to 150,000 feet in the last few years.
Yeah, one thing Kumar didn't take into consideration was the lower aquifer.
That is something that could be looked at in the future to determine if tapping into the artesian aspect of the lower aquifer actually, if it could be used for agricultural production, maybe one of those added on type of production rights that would be in addition to the other, because there is a distinct separation between the upper and lower aquifer. Excuse me.
Dwayne, how was the change in storage of 1,300 acre feet calculated?
It was based on the difference between those two maps that showed the elevations. They have a program that runs across those two, and they get the highs and lows, and they do an estimation of that.
Can that be cross-checked with production versus precipitation?
Yes, and that's exactly what they did, is they combine, they do both methods. They do a mass balance method and a change, and they came in pretty close.
Very good.
I mean, within what you can analyze in a groundwater basin. The one thing we know, none of these numbers are right, but we hope they're close.
Yes.
They're in the right ballpark. So, and that's, as far as groundwater, I think that's the most important thing, to manage where the production is versus the amount coming in. You measure those two, and then you do the difference in elevations. You need to get a handle on it. My pitch for not doing a model. So I think that concludes my report on the Water Master
Great.
report.
Fantastic report, thank you. Okay, Brock, item 8A2.
That's something the Westside.
Thank you.
Yes, and there was a discussion that occurred at the last Water Master meeting with regards to if there was a potential conflict amongst various entities, if they were able to have an item go before the board. In other words, if AVEK Waterworks 40 had an item that was going on before the board, was there a conflict per se, so they couldn't vote or that aspect. However, the attorneys that were involved in the room and our own attorney, Jim Markman, met with the committee on Friday, and they've determined that there is not a conflict as that would prevent us from voting in some kind of circumstances. In essence, the very nature of the fact that this is a water master and everybody has an interest in the water that's in the groundwater basin, so every decision is a conflict in some fashion or another. And so whether you're a landowner or producer or any type, have any indication, otherwise we would have directors that are members that didn't represent any particular faction. But even then they would be living here, so they'd be getting water from someplace, right? So, yeah, basically that's where the item was left. There was, Director Donato was concerned about this and asked that it be looked into more thoroughly, and that it may need to go to the judge for determination. But after discussion with the committee and our own attorney, we don't believe that is, we would need to take those steps.
Any questions? So the committee met and discussed the issue, and what's the recommendation from the committee, Director Pierce?
That there is some conflict and that needs to be on.
Okay.
I don't think we have a problem. Is anybody else going to, any of the other participants in the Water Master Board looking at approving the same type of order that we have heard that?
I don't believe, I'm unaware that there are. I know it was, there was a concern by our board member, and that's why it was brought before the committee for further consideration by our chairman to give us advice.
So basically, we're giving Director Paris direction as to what our board would prefer, because it's up to you to vote.
Right, right. And I think there was an overriding legal issue. It wasn't necessarily his personal conflict, it was the agency's conflict, and I think that overriding legal issue is what was addressed.
And so it's necessary for us to have a board order for Director Paris to take action?
No, there was, this was put on in case there was a board order to do something other than continue what we're doing. So there's no need to have action on this particular board order. If the recommendation would have been to send it to this item to the judge for further review, then that would require board order.
Okay, so there's no action required on item 8A2, so it's just a discussion or a report.
Correct.
Thank you. Item number 9, General Manager's Report.
Okay. Here's the General Manager's Report for beginning of July here. As you can imagine, not much in the way of weather in our Feather River region. Snow levels around 14,000 feet, so that's really high. Here's our precipitation map, and as you can see, we had a very robust May, and fell off in June. We expect no precipitation in July, August, and very little in September. So we are at 75% of our allocation, which is a really good year. So if you look at our totals here, you can see here that this is average right here for this period, and we're way up at this location. You can see we had 3 other years that are all wetter, but certainly this has been good. Also, what's been very, very important about this year is the snowpack. It's been much more snow, and that has added a lot of runoff to the system, so it's made it a lot better, even though we had a wetter year. Because it was warmer, we didn't have the same kind of runoff. And most of the snow is gone. You can see that we're all way down in these regions down in here in July, which we would expect. Still well above average right now, 33%. To have any snow at all is pretty amazing. And you can see all of our reservoirs are throughout the state are full or above average. You know, here's Lake Orville, so we're well above average here, and even in St. Louis, you can see we're 143% here average for this year. Staff is looking at ways in which to, from an operation point of view, reduce the amount of water that we will carry over and have in storage in St. Louis Reservoir, in anticipation that with these high reservoir levels, that any kind of early wet years, months might provide a spill of those supplies, and we're trying to reduce that amount down while still maintaining our summer delivery requirements.
When should we expect to see that?
When would we expect to see?
Your recommendations?
Oh, we're working on it right now. You probably see it in probably next couple of weeks.
Great.
Yeah. Working on relationships with a couple of with Irvine Ranch, which we have been approved for agreement with.
Wait, is there any plans for any new reservoirs in California? Plan?
There is a plan for a new reservoir for the sites. Reservoir, which is here, it is located, mouse word. It's north of Sacramento in this particular area in here. So there is a reservoir that's planned in that particular region. But nothing south of the delta that I'm aware of. Most of the storage is looking at additional groundwater banking or groundwater reservoirs as opposed to surface water reservoirs.
Is there a reason for that?
It's very difficult to permit new reservoirs, and there's a lot of environmental requirements that make them difficult. And you have to have a certain amount of yield that's from the project to correspond to the cost of the construction, and it's very difficult. I think Temperance Flat had a proposal to do something, but they had problems making the project pencil out without significant public funds going in to cover the cost.
Which still means it doesn't pencil out.
Yes. As far as, here's the graph showing the conditions, you can see where we up here, we're right at our total capacity. 120% of our historical average, 96% capacity. And here's San Luis Reservoir. This is the average line here, and we're way over here. Once again, 120% of our historical average. You can see this is a graph showing from 2003 to 2019 what our final allocations are. And if you ever wonder why general managers have a hard time sleeping, you can see the water supply varies from year to year significantly. And you can have 3 years where you're wondering if you're going to ever have any water at all, and then you get 3 or 4 years like this where you're worried about making sure that you have a place to put all the water that you have. So it's always we just have to remember is that today it's good, but we could easily go into one of those downward cycles pretty soon. Remember here, 2008 is when the biological opinions came into play, and you can see that we had a couple of highs that are up in this region, but we were always over 60% mostly prior to 2008. And when 2008 kicked in, we had immediate downward. So, things in the 70s or 80s are more the anomaly rather than the rule. As you're all aware, we had 2 large earthquakes, one on July 4th, 7.1 magnitude July 5th. Governor Newsom and President Trump have declared a state of emergency. We inspected both of our, all of our facilities under both incidents. Nothing there to report as far as damage. However, there are 2,000 people still out of running water in Trona, and AVEK offered support pending BWR approval as of this afternoon. That support is not likely to be necessary. Mojave sent over to Trona a crew of 4 individuals to help with water main repair. And we provided support for trucked water if that was going to be necessary. We could provide that to Cal City and be able to supply some water for water trucks if they needed it. It's about 45-minute, 50-minute drive, so it would have been fairly close, closer than Mojave or some of the other locations. But at this point, there's nothing requested of AVEK at this time. And at this point, I'm going to give you turn it over to Justin Lipsay, and he's going to give you a update on the Upper Amagosa Creek Recharge Project. We have a presentation for you.
Good evening, President Sorswall and members of the board. Just to give you a quick update on the Upper Amagosa Creek Recharge Project. We've done a couple quarterly updates recently. This one's going to go a little bit more in depth on the project, just kind of refresh everybody's memory. So it's 2 phases to the project. There's the aqueduct turnout and pipeline that's going to deliver the water to the recharge basins. And then there's the basins themselves and the public amenities that go along with that. The picture here shows the pipeline alignment. So there was a notch cut into the aqueduct just about here. And the pipeline's going to run right along this. It's, I think, City Ranch Road, on down towards Elizabeth Lake Road, and then over to about 25th Street West before it crosses over into where the recharge basins are. The initial project cost estimate was $14,500,000, and the project recharge capacity is 6,400 acre-feet per year. Some of the project partners, City of Palmdale Project, obviously, AVEK, LA County Waterworks, and Palmdale Water District, both supporting the project and committing some funding in return for some recharge capacity in the project. $6,500,000 was received from a Prop 1E grant. AVEK contributed, or has agreed to contribute $2.5 million to the project in exchange for 50% of the project recharge capacity, which equates to 2,755 acre-feet per year. LA County and Waterworks and Palmdale Water District contributed 25% as well. So the remaining funding would come from the City of Palmdale, and just recently, over the last few months, I guess they've been talking with staff about increase in project costs due to steel increases and other project-related increases. So what they're going to likely be doing is coming around and asking for additional monetary participation in exchange for keeping our capacity at 50%. So, and the meter vault is right here. Piping installation has begun, and the 48-inch transmission pipeline, which takes it from the aqueduct out to the recharge basins, has started. So they're estimating that this phase of the project will be complete in September, so just a couple months away. Yeah. Sorry about that. Something happened here. So recharge. This is for the recharge basins and the public amenities. That's about 60% complete as of the end of May. There was a pedestrian bridge installed right here. There's going to be some pathways and things that go around that area. So that bridge right there was trucked in one piece from the Midwest somewhere. So that was pretty cool. And the basin distribution pipeline is almost complete, and they're estimating that this phase of the project is going to be completed by mid-October. It's really the last part of this project, at least this phase of it, is really just kind of doing the finish work and getting the decomposed granite pathways and hydro seeding the sides of the basins and whatnot. So, last bullet point there, so far to date, AVEK has contributed just over $1 million to the project, which is 44% of our initial $2.5 million commitment. As I mentioned, that may go up. And just real quick, I think we've got about a minute here of a drone flyby that Ben Melendez, our engineering tech, took just the other day. So starting here at the aqueduct turnout structure, you can see the control building and the meter vault. And, go ahead and click go. So this kind of follows the path of the pipeline. It's going to turn right around that curve there, going towards the left. And so all this area that you're looking at actually right now, the pipeline is already in place. And you'll see right up here where they've got it trenched out to continue the installation of the pipeline. And they've got the 48-inch pipeline there all laid out, ready to be installed. Once you get down here to the end of the road, there's a pretty nice flyby of the recharge basins. This is approaching Elizabeth Lake Road there. Pipeline's going to turn to the right. And here's a flyover of the basin. So this side actually is just natural creek runoff and some walking trails. And then just as it passes under the bridge, you get a nice aerial here of what's been accomplished so far at the recharge basin. So most of the grading work has been completed. A lot of the turnout structures are finished. And you can kind of see off in the distance that pedestrian bridge. And that's right there on the corner of 25th Street West and Elizabeth Lake Road. And that's it. So this is a rendering of what the project is expected to look like when it's finished. And if you're curious to take a little bit of a closer look, there's a blown up picture of it on the easel just over there in the corner of the boardroom. If you're curious to take a closer look at what those amenities are going to be. Another rendering, this came from the environmental impact report. It's kind of what it might look like as you're walking down the bike path there. And finally, just some shots of maybe some of the information boards and things that they're going to have as you walk through that area.
Justin, could you go back 2 slides, please?
Yep.
One more. Or no, sorry, yeah. So from where that turn is, where the recharge ponds, are those actually going to be ponds of water?
Mm-hmm.
There, and it's going to be like a kind of like a little lake area.
Yeah.
And that just kind of, that's the idea.
That's the idea, yeah. So the project partner is going to be able to recharge water in this area.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a minimum commitment from the city of Palmdale to purchase some water and keep water in those basins.
Okay. And so there is going to be water in there at all?
That's my understanding.
Right. Okay.
What's the difference between a recharge basin and a water bank?
They're kind of the same. So we have recharge basins as well at our Westside Water Bank and our High Desert Water Bank. So ours are more, put the water in and allow them to go away and turn them off at some point. But yeah, they're just a part of the water bank.
So that's imported water that's going in there from AVEK?
Yep.
And then why is Palmdale, what did you say about Palmdale?
It could be AVEK water put in there, it could be Palmdale Water District or Elegant Water.
The joint venture.
And then this might be for Dwayne more than you, Justin, but I saw that AVEK we're keeping 50% of the recharge. Where does the rest of the water go to?
In other words, the other partners have a
Split.
A split,
Okay.
so they can use
All right.
a certain amount of capacity there.
Okay.
So, yeah. And those ponds, they'll try and keep some wet, but they'll have to let them dry out too, because otherwise they'll end up closing up. So that's why they'll rotate them around. They'll always have water in some, but they'll rotate them around a little bit.
When are we expected to start water? That be September?
So the project is scheduled to be complete mid-October for this recharge area here. So imagine right after, as soon as it's complete, I think we'll probably be able to put
Probably as soon as the next state water allocation becomes available, and there'll be a certain amount of water, that there'll be another area where we can place water in the Antelope Valley.
Dwayne, are we looking to place water right now, so we don't have water room for?
Right now, we have places for all the water that we have. That's coming this particular year, so we're good there.
Is that the same that you said you're going to have a report in the next couple of weeks on?
Right.
Okay.
In other words, we got a place to put everything. It's not like we're going to not have a location for storage and or otherwise use it and gets returned back. Like back in the old days when we got 80%, we only used 30, and the rest of it got turned back to the state, used by some other contractors.
When would Article 21 water become available?
Article 21 water will become available once there is pumping that's allowed in the aqueduct that would need to be stored in semi as water treatment plant flows, we're at 48.2 million gallons a day. And so we're doing fairly well there. Oops, see if I get this right. As far as geopurification, we're pumping about 5.3 million. And once again, that's the minimum that's necessary to keep the pipelines fresh. As far as recharge goes, you can see that we're 165 acre feet a day, about 5 acre feet on the east side. Our recharge in 2018 through March is 8,536 acre feet. Recharge through 2019 through June is 20,000 acre feet that we've actually put in the ground. We have about 80,480 acre feet of recoverable water. That's water in the ground minus the 10%. So, you know, we've got at least, you know, about a little less than 2 years of storage in the ground. This is also our customer water requests versus actual deliveries. We were able to add June in here. You can see that in April and May there was, in March we were doing pretty well, but April, May there was a reduction. And then you can see the reduction in June. We'll see our next 3 months are hot, hot periods, so we'll see what kind of demand we have moving forward. It's supposed to be 100 degrees over the weekend, so you might see an enhancement in our water deliveries.
Is it that the requests, they didn't need the water from AVEK, or they got the water from other sources?
I can't tell you that for certain as to whether there was just not the demand that they were anticipating.
Do we ask them specifically?
We have not.
Maybe we should send them an accounting of what they've requested and what they've used and see what they have to say about it, because maybe they're just unaware.
Yeah, well, I know they're shooting, Waterworks 40 in particular is shooting for their 70%, so they've been taking more. They were, the Water Master report indicates that they were, in 2018, they made their 70% first year that they made their 70% imported water supply usage. So they're definitely moving in the right direction.
Great.
So,
do you think the cooler weather could have contributed to some of the reductions?
Sure. I mean, it's very temperature sensitive, and in our particular area, it's outside irrigation. I mean, we don't necessarily take more showers in the summertime than we do in the wintertime, or wash more clothes per se, but we do irrigate more, and you have to, otherwise everything dies, as we all know. So it's very, very temperature related.
Great, I like seeing that.
Yeah.
So, our THMs are continuing to be well below our area, our goal of 64 micrograms per liter, and bromate is non-detect in the clear well. And that's because you have such a significant outflow going through the delta that the seawater has actually been pushed out quite a ways, and will continue to be pushed out as the fall X2 begins to, the fall X2 is the location where the fresh water has to be, and per one of the biological opinions, that requires a considerable amount of water to maintain that. Some legislative updates. We've got some good news. The Governor Newsom signed the state water budget, or the state budget, I should say, and includes $70 million to begin the implementation of the voluntary agreements and habitat projects, which is a very good outcome of the state budget. That means he's committed to the voluntary agreements. And just to refresh your memory, what the voluntary agreements are, is they're an agreement between many factions, some of the environmental groups and the state water contractors and others that are within the Delta to make sense, and is it doing any benefit, and to be able to adapt and change if it doesn't. And it's kind of a, you know, it sounds very logical approach, but it's been very difficult to get that to be agreed upon, whereas the State Water Board had proposed very hard, firm limits of flow. So, and it's not just the state water contractors that's providing the additional flow. This includes landowners, other types of flows in the delta. So it's a much reduced impact on our water that we can divert down south. So this is a good thing. So they're actually looking to identify projects that will improve species, and so that's moving forward. They've also had stable ongoing funding to assist disadvantaged communities with affordable access to the safe drinking water. If you remember, there was the water tax that was contemplated as a method in which to fund getting monies to these disadvantaged communities. What has gone into the law is that there will be they're going to use $100 million in greenhouse gas reduction funds rather than the water tax to fund that. There'll be $30 million from the general fund in 2019 and 20, with $130 million continuously appropriated between now and 2030 in order to address this situation. And
Is that cap and trade money?
Cap and trade.
Isn't that supposed to go to fixing the roads?
Well, they may be using it for that too, but they're going to use it to help this statewide water situation. But Justin, I understand your frustration, but remember, it's better than a water tax. That would have been a new tax that would have been added on.
Oh, tax this, tax that.
Yes. So anyway, so that was the Senate Bill 200, and that was the outcome we were looking for.
Good.
Recommend.
The monitoring wells that are right on the border of the saltwater intrusion, or so we got to go out. How's that work?
Well, saltwater intrusion would occur in coastal regions where you have salt water coming in. What I was referring to is there is a specific regulations that's contained in biological opinions, which they call it X2. I don't know why, but it's called X2. But it's a location along the delta where fresh water has to be. In a very, very dry year, the X2 location is very inland. In a wet year, the X2 location is very, very closer to the coast. In order to maintain that location closer to the coast, they have to make sure that there is plenty of water to go through the system in order to maintain that fall X2 location. And that's why you'll see some of the water coming out of Oroville, where it's really full, is they're holding back about 500,000 acre-feet to be able to make that fall to conversion, or that fall X2 requirement in September and October. So every one of these regulations has a water cost, water that's going to the ocean.
Okay, item number 11, director's reports. Do we have any reports?
No report.
Okay, item number 12, attorney report.
No report.
Item 13, old business.
Yeah.
Do we have a reason to go to closed session, correct?
Yes, we do on item E.
Item E. Okay, so I have a motion to go into closed session.
I move we go into closed session.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We'll now